Good afternoon. It is 3 p.m. and Richland County Commissioners are back in session following a recess this morning. We were scheduled to be joined by Judge Robinson and Judge Naumoff. Judge Robinson remains furthering justice in Richland County, and he is still in trial, so he is unable to make it. He has sent Court Administrator Tammy Worthman in his place, and we are joined by Judge Naumoff. Obviously, I'm Commissioner Tony Vero, Daryl Banks, Cliff Mears, County Administrator Andrew Keller, Stacy Kroll. Are Laura and Hardy on?
No, Al and Carl are on.
Oh, okay. So we were joined by Thelma and Louise in Media Land, and we were visited in September. We had a request from our common pleas judges of a need for a fourth courtroom for a couple of reasons. Obviously, the first being the social distancing requirements and just general good safe practices related to COVID, and also just for the opportunity to make justice run a little more smoothly in Richland County. So we're hoping to have them back today to update us on if the need still exists, and then for a discussion on a timetable if it's determined that the need is appropriate. So take it away, Judge Naumoff.
Well, the need definitely still exists at the point in time. We are still using safe practices as far as COVID. We are separating jurors within our courtrooms. We had an issue arise last week or 2 weeks ago, with the water main break, which at that time, and I'll run that back. But the issue we have, again, is we have a courtroom right now that is really not functional down there or conducive to conduct big hearings on, which is our courtroom 3. We have our one training room for our probation department downstairs, which is being used for grand juries. So that keeps us from having that training room for our probation department. So that's become a big inconvenience. But the fact of the matter is, by having a bigger courtroom, we would be able to conduct the grand jury sessions in there with safe distancing practices. It allows grand jurors not to use our current courtrooms like we have been using. We've had a tight schedule. We've had to flip-flop courts sometimes. There's been a few times where courts haven't been available because of the situation that's been going on right now. But it would allow us to conduct, again, we have 3 magistrates sharing courtroom number 3 right now. And the fact of the matter is, this will allow us to conduct our arraignments, because we're required to have arraignments every day within courtroom 3. It would allow us to conduct our bench trials, mediation, all other kinds of things within that courtroom. So it's a necessity. Whether it was COVID related or not, it is a real necessity right now. COVID just hastened everything. And the fact of the matter is, having difficulties. I mean, Judge Rice and I shared a courtroom 1 for, what would you say, Tammy, about a year and a half? At least.
That because of COVID?
That was because of COVID, because we had to separate jurors. We had to split them up. My courtroom was the only one sufficient enough where we could split the jurors up, and we still had to run them in 2 sessions. We had to run any trial we did with voir dire, selecting juries. We had to run them 2 sessions, both morning and afternoon, because of the amount of space that we had to provide for those jurors. It made it difficult. So I would jump over to courtroom number 2, Judge Robinson's court. He would take over courtroom 1, do his voir dire, but it was the only way we could ever get anything done. And so it made it very difficult. Having the extra courtroom now would allow us at times, if necessary, we could probably conduct voir dire there if we needed to, without interrupting another one in case we had 2 trials going at the same time, which is, as far as voir dire selection and selection of juries, that doesn't happen too often on the same day. But we both have trial schedules set on Thursdays, which it could happen. It's also conducive to the fact that we have treatment court. And I know Judge Robinson's been splitting up his treatment courts, bringing them in and separating because he can't have them in all at one time. He's been doing that in the past, but that courtroom would allow more sufficient space than probably what we have right now. But just the caseload, everything that's going on. It's something we need. I mean, it's been there. The need's been there. It's been there for a long time. Courtroom 3, which was, how long ago was courtroom 3?
16.
2016. The way it was set up, it never really materialized as a courtroom should. I know that Attorney Thompson and I were just talking the other day, and he actually tried a case down in that courtroom because of the situation. And so we need something more sufficient. We need that because just the number of cases right now that are going through, the arraignments, everything that's happening, it's just building up. And a little extra leg room is going to help us. And I think it's a better process. Plus, we have the situation when we're doing voir dire and we bring juries in for jury selection. They're sitting outside in the hallway upstairs, and they're on top of each other. They're literally on top of each other. We have our jurors there. Judge Robinson has his jurors there for his trials. Judge Cockley's running her courtroom. There are people waiting to go out in there. Our probation's department's right there. People are sitting, waiting to get in. So that lobby could have 100 people sitting there just on top of each other. Having that extra courtroom would allow us, say, if we're going to do voir dire and bring juries in, we can have them sitting down there waiting, or we can conduct the voir dire there where there's less traffic flow. They're separated from everybody else, and you cut the number of bodies down by half at least. So I think just for safety purposes, if you go along COVID-19, I mean, that comes into play there as well. So I just think it's a safer atmosphere. And in fact, when you have that many people together, you just don't know what's happening. I mean, you got probationers, you got defendants. I mean, they're all on top of each other. They're right in mixed in with the jurors, which doesn't work as well either. So
Part of the plan would be to also add a couple witness rooms.
Mhm.
Currently, right now, we have a small witness room. It used to be Magistrate Dalby's office. That's the only witness room we have. That's the only place that we can separate a victim from other witnesses. And so I
and you can
think,
barely fit 2 people in that room.
and
It's
on
tight.
top of that, the other day when you had a trial, we had 6 officers standing in our hallway.
Yeah.
The main hallway between the exterior hallway doors and our door, which is the only way to get to our receptionist and to us. So, and that's not a very wide hallway. And I've got 6 officers standing in there. They're sitting on both sides of and some are in chairs, some are standing. We had a case where there was 6 civil attorneys the other day. They're all standing there. So then we have the issue of not only are they all in a confined space with no place to go, but then we're trying to work our way through them if we need in and out of the office. Attorneys trying to get to us are trying to work their way through. So it's impossible to social distance our witnesses.
Mhm.
It's impossible to even separate them from the jurors sometimes. And, when you're talking about a case that's had a violence or a victim associated with it, the last thing we want is them having to walk through jurors, family members of the defendant. Right now, there's no place else for them to be. So having the extra space and being able to account for a couple extra conference rooms that we could also use for a jury to deliberate if we needed to. We could have attorneys that they could meet with their clients. If we needed to have pretrials, we could do those in there.
Yeah, and that is a good point. I mean, we've had deliberations that have gone overnight where we start something else the
And they
next
try.
day. We've got no place to put the jurors.
Yeah.
With COVID-19, we've had to spread them around our courtroom. So the courtroom's taken up. We've got no place to go. And so we've tried to scramble around trying to find places for the jurors to place the jurors during that time. Another courtroom downstairs obviously would help. We could place the jurors down there. They could continue the deliberations down there. Or, we could take our courtroom down there and allow the jurors to continue deliberating upstairs. But it's happened. And so, I mean, that's the situation. It's tight. And like I said, with a grand jury room, prosecutor's office has been using the training room downstairs.
Which isn't big enough for either one of those.
Correct.
That's correct.
And the fact of the matter is, though, now our probation department doesn't have that,
Yeah.
which they use quite extensively, but have not been able to do so for quite some time now. So it does make it difficult. Plus the fact we've been sending people down to courtroom 4 to view court proceedings. The other courtroom, we can do that within that courtroom. And so that would help tremendously. Right now, the way it's set up, it makes it, especially if 2 trials are going on at the same time. Thing is, we can still use courtroom 4 for one of the trials, and then the one downstairs currently, and then the new one being addressed here. We could have that on the second floor. We could have another viewing area for people wanting to watch the trials, because we have to leave them open for the public. The problem is we're spreading our jurors throughout the spectator section, and so public can't come in and watch the trials. So we have to set up the cameras, video equipment downstairs in the basement where they're watching it. Well, there's been a few times when both me and Judge Robinson have had trials going on at the same time, and you can't differentiate whose trial is what, because the noise level in there is just, it's difficult to hear anything.
Yeah, you have
So-
competing monitors,
Monitors
competing
and
sound.
speakers. So what would happen is one trial could be viewed down there, another trial could be viewed up there. So we, just appease Supreme Court and those other institutions that state that we have to have trials open to the public. And so that would take care of that.
Looking at the layout, I know you guys have done a good job in saying, hey, if we could have this, where would be the best place to do this? So with that in mind, you have a recommendation as to where you would like it?
I think we've discussed it heavily back and forth, and I think ultimately really the best place is second floor. And that's
Clerk's
what,
office.
it's where the clerk's office is right now. We have the other courtroom there where we do our arraignments and mediations. That's right next door. So we could have court staff right within both places. And so it's not having to have somebody run a few floors down and come back up. It's everybody's in one place. So it just makes it for everyone to deal with. And plus the fact you have probate on that floor too. So kind of really just makes it.
Well, now if we put you in another floor too, you could state claim that you have control over that floor. That way, if we keep you to the second and third floor, the judges can't lay claim overall, but
That's true. You just be responsible for security at the front door then.
that's your guys's.
We'll man them out on the second and third floor. You take care of the front end.
The arraignment, they used to have them, what, every couple of days?
Twice a month.
Twice a month.
And then
A month.
and
Twice a
the,
month.
In the Supreme Court said
the legislature.
Yeah,
legislator
Changed the law. Right?
have them every
We have
5 days a
we
week.
have to have a hearing within 24 hours of them being taken into custody.
Same with a bond hearing. You
Yep.
have to have a bond hearing within 2 days. Stalkings, if somebody wants a protection order, we have 24 hours to do a hearing on those. And those are walk-ins off the street. We never know how many people are going to get picked up over an evening or over a weekend. So we might have, when we come in on Monday, we might have another 10, 12 cases that we need to set for that day. So we have one courtroom that we're trying very hard to negotiate hearings. We know we have to have bench trials, mediations, damages hearings for our magistrates, and then throwing these unexpected things in as well. It's a pull on our CSO as well, because they have to be available for some of those things. And having our staff on the same floor right across from each other keeps us from having to have another support staff person. If we put them a courtroom on a different floor, I have to have somebody there to monitor comings and goings and who's checking in and who's not. And we're running as tight as we can with staff anyway. And so if I was trying to pull somebody between 2 floors, it would be impossible.
Well, obviously with ARPA money and the $10 million in revenue loss, I think it would be clear that if we move forward with this, that's what ARPA was. Part of what ARPA was to be allowed to be was the provision of government services and the revenue loss piece. So, if I'm a Joe or Jane taxpayer, I think it's important for him or her to understand that, local governments were given money for the provision of these type of government services. So obviously, Mr. Keller, we believe it would be an appropriate fit under the auspices of the revenue loss allowance.
Yes.
So then the next question, Mr. Clerk Liaison, although I'll bet she'd be very happy because I know she's had tight confines, but have we had discussions with our clerk Lynn Frary as to her desire to move? Because she would obviously be evicted from the second floor. So, but I have a feeling, just in not knowing, I think she would be looking forward to this.
I think she is definitely looking forward to it, to get more room, and the organization of the room would be more conducive to doing her business.
I mean, yeah, Lynn, if for those taxpayers out there, media, Lynn doesn't even have a separate office within her own clerk's office. So if she needs to discuss important employee personnel matters, there is no space for her in our president clerk's office to do so.
Uses our conference room.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, people talk about living high off the hog. That's certainly not the case here in Richland County. So I don't think even Joe or Jane taxpayer would have an issue with having a place to do public business. So then the next step, Mr. County Administrator, is how would we proceed? Obviously, we were moving the jail cells to at least make that space available for whatever came available. What would be the next step in this process to move forward with looking at a fourth courtroom?
Next step procedurally would be for the Board of Commissioners to issue a request for qualification, RFQ, to contract for the services of an architect or an engineer, who can then, design the project that we need to bid it out to a contractor. And that can be done even while, in fact, it should be done as the demolition work is ongoing, because we'd like it to be as seamless as possible. Once the demo's done, we want to get in there and get windows installed and get HVAC taken care of, and then
Level the floor.
Level the floor, right?
In other words, moving the clerk of court's office is going to be first in time
Obviously.
predicate to the courts being able to have this
Right.
additional space on the floor too. So, but RFQ is the next step.
So do you need a formal motion from us now, or do we wait? Do you?
We can wait. We're going to get the RFQ prepared.
Okay.
And we'll vote on it then.
So I think without having a formal vote now, I know I'm one to say, let's move forward with the next step.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so let's move forward. I know we discussed in September. I'm sure Al and Carl have some hard-hitting questions for the general division, not the commissioners. So fire away.
Good afternoon, Judge. You mentioned caseload. How much has that expanded? Do you have any specific numbers the last 3 or 4 or 5 years in terms of cases that you're actually handling in the courtrooms?
I think our criminal caseload has, and Tammy can correct me wrong, it's fairly much the same. I think maybe they're taking a little longer, but they are the same amount. Civils is decreased, but the fact of the matter, the criminals seem to be drawn out more than that they had in the past. It seems to be we're having more trials than we had in the past, so it's taking up courtroom space and time. And so that's really where that falls into place. There might be a small increase, but I mean, nothing too dramatic. Still think it's probably more than most counties as far as if you break up the amount per general division judge here. I think our caseloads are probably quite a bit bigger than most jurisdictions. But that being said, it's not really changed a whole lot. It's just, I think, the length of time that these cases are winding their way through. A lot of cases are going to trial. It takes up time, takes up a courtroom.
Well, and the amount of trials that we had, even during COVID, last year between the two judges, they had, I think 16, 17 jury trials. And the year before, even with COVID and being down during the governor's stay-at-home orders. And then again, there was, I believe, a period of time in December of 20 where we were unable to have juries. I mean, even then, during that year, we had 16 jury trials, even during COVID. And that was unprecedented in the state of Ohio. Nobody else was having trials. Nobody else was even in their offices or in their courts. So, when you start to calculate how much time it takes to have a trial, and there's 52 weeks in a year, it goes fairly quickly. I think last year we had over 1,000 criminal cases filed in Richland County. Again, our civil ones are down, but that's mostly because of the foreclosure moratorium. At some point, that's got to come off. And when that does, I believe the last number I heard, they were estimating over 36,000 foreclosures didn't happen in the state of Ohio. And I'm sure that's much higher than that now. At some point, those are all going to have to be processed. And when that happens, we're going to be under a ton of paper.
And understand when those 1,000 cases are filed, there's still cases that are still pending from the previous year. So, I mean, you're anywhere in the neighborhood of 1,300 to 1,500 cases. So that's quite a bit. And as Tammy indicated, I mean, we had 33 weeks between me and Judge Robinson of jury trials. That's or 33 cases. It's extended beyond 33 weeks. So you take that out and you take that amount of time out of the courtroom and the use of that courtroom, that really bogs everything down. It does take up a lot of time.
Okay, do you think, when did the General Assembly or the state or the governor sign the law changing the number or pace of arraignments? And is that something where you think that the kind of law of unintended consequences, that it was going to increase burden on common pleas court general divisions?
I'm thinking it's somewhere about a year and a half ago, Carl. I'm not really sure on the specific date, but it's been at least a year and a half, I'd say. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. We have to get it processed. Staff has to hustle, get, cases made up, get the docket ready. It's been a big burden. I mean, it's taken a lot of their extra time away from them where they can't do other things. And so, yeah, it's a huge burden on the courts. It really is. But it's what's required. That's what we do. I mean, it's all been part of the bail reform. And that's what we're dealing with right now.
Okay, one of the things you mentioned, Judge, is that you're having more trials than you've seen in the past. Is there any one or two factors in that? I mean, that you've seen that increase in the number of trials?
You just go through cycles like that. I don't know that you can pinpoint it on any one thing. But the bottom line is it's what's happening. It's manifesting itself. I had to pinpoint something. I can't tell you that it's one thing or another. But you go through cycles like this.
Okay, and you obviously have seen the space that is going to be available when they move Lynn's court or move her offices out. How big a new courtroom do you envision, and is that going to be space enough to do the things that you want to do?
I was just talking with Tammy here on the way down, and we had discussed this. I asked her the question, but yeah, I mean, we're looking at a courtroom that's comparable to the size of Judge Robinson's right now. So we're looking at about probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 50 seats, a spectator section where they have a jury box. Will be in there, sufficient room for opposing parties. Plus, we're talking about a conference room in there as well as some interview rooms. So it's going to open it up quite a bit. And so it's going to help out tremendously.
That's what I had for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Al?
It was discussed a little bit earlier about a timetable. What kind of timetable would you like to see? I mean, obviously ASAP, but what would be a reasonable timetable to get some of this done?
I think we'll have the demolition done in May, right?
And that's, as Chuck said today, we hope to do the floors at the same time we're doing the bars. We don't know how the leveling of the floors. That's actually a big piece, Al. We got to figure out what the solution is to the floors. If we can do it at the same time.
You'd have to wait.
The
until
same.
it's done.
I guess my question is, what kind of timetable would the court like to see?
Today?
Maybe.
3:25.
I can't put it on. I mean, obviously we'd like it as soon as possible. I mean, We understand there's logistical problems. There's other issues that we have to deal with. But we'll take it when we can get it.
Well,
That's the bottom line.
and Al, from the commissioner's side, we're going to work on this to get it done as soon as possible.
Yes.
We see the need. And, you know, we talk about it's going to help the courts. It's going to help Lynn. It's also going to help the prosecutor because he needs a place to have his grand jury and we'll have another meeting room downstairs. So it's going to benefit more than the courts.
Our side of the rebuild of a room is not going to be as extensive. It's going to be putting up a couple walls and ordering furniture. I mean, honestly, it shouldn't be extensive from our perspective on constructing what we need to have done.
And the heavy work's gonna be getting the clerks because of the bars and the floor and then building. I mean, you're building a new office out. My gut tells me 2 years, probably longer, 2 years from now, maybe even 2 years from May. I don't know, but at least 2 years, my gut tells me. And I am not a construction expert, just instinct, right? I mean, bars in May,
And we're hoping for better.
I think it'll go quicker than that, but
if we can get Lynn's.
Yeah.
2 years.
Other thing, I don't know whether it's so much of a question, but kind of looking for a comment. It seems to me, going back into the past, that really that third courtroom even was kind of I don't want to say jury rigged, but you know, it was
Brought
kind of,
jokes.
No pun intended, right?
well, it was intended originally to be just a hearing room, not as much a courtroom. And Judge Deweese specifically designed it like that. Again, things were different when that courtroom was created because we didn't have to have arraignments every day. We didn't have to have bond hearings every day. We didn't have to have stalking hearings every day. And so it actually was more of just an overflow space for the court and rather than a full-blown courtroom. If we had it to do differently, of course, the layout of the room would have been different. And you need to understand too, there are 3 magistrates' offices attached to that courtroom, as well as a conference room and a support staff room. So, you know, what you see isn't what is all there. But yeah, if we had it to do over and we could have had 20/20 vision down the road to see what was coming at us as far as the requirements for daily hearings, it would have probably looked a lot different.
are you looking to redo any of that as part of this, or do you just want to do the
After
fourth courtroom?
After we get the 4th courtroom, the intention will be to do a proper upgrade to that courtroom so that it's more effective and efficient for the courts.
Okay, pardon my stupidity, but where is that third courtroom? Is it on one of the L levels?
Directly across from the clerk of courts on the 2nd floor.
Most people don't even know it's there, Al. It's literally across from Lynn Frary's office.
Okay, that's why I asked, because I've, you know, hardly ever been on the 2nd floor, just, you know, on occasion. So I wasn't totally familiar where that was. Was that third courtroom done when when Lynn did some rearranging of her office too?
The law library moved because we needed the space. I'd have to check our records upstairs to see exactly what year that was.
No, that was more of a curiosity question.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
okay, I think that's all the questions I had.
Carl, any follow-ups?
I just wanted to point out, I posted the story earlier about the uneven floor. And if you need advice on how to get it done, someone said, just fill the holes and use self-leveling cement. So
Okay.
your engineering problem is solved. So let's just move forward.
I made the mistake of accidentally seeing one of the comments, which is a huge no-no in Facebook world. And I saw that this is our secret way of hiding money, that it's an excuse to sack money away for improper purposes. And I went, why did I have to see that? So,
Carl, I think we just found our architect.
right.
Here it is.
Well, if that person would
Facebook
like to Good girl.
Facebook architecture is like Facebook medicine and Facebook
Yes.
legal services. I mean,
Yes.
you know,
It doesn't come with an indemnification, does it?
If anyone
No.
believes we're using this as a old government shell game, they're more than welcome. It's their public building. We will gladly show them what the floors look like.
Carl, I think
No comment.
you can include Facebook news in your.
Yeah.
I just do my stuff, but thanks, guys.
All right. See no further business. We will recess at 3:30. Adjourn. Sorry.